Welcome to the Recreation Nova Scotia Board of Directors video training series. This training series is made possible by a grant from the Nova Scotia Voluntary Sector Professional Capacity Trust. And this video is on rules of order. For a lot of organizations and for a lot of chairs or presidents, the rules of order are very confusing. So we've created this guide to help walk you through some of the key components of it. Now, there are many different rules of order. The most common that we're familiar with is Robert's Rules of Order, but there are 3 or 4 others, including a Canadian one called Call to Order. So it's wise, if you need to adopt rules of order for your organization or for your meetings, to research which one is best. Remember, check your bylaws, because it's quite possible that your bylaws specify which one your organization should use, and you need to do a bylaw change if you want to change which one your organization follows. Attached to this video, you're going to find some cheat sheets that you're going to find very helpful in running your meeting. But where did rules of order start? They started in government, in Parliament. And the purpose is to ensure that the majority has their way, but that we must protect the rights of the minority. They must be heard, and that we must protect the rights of individual members. We must safeguard people who weren't there, and we must do all of that in one system. And that's what rules of order are meant to do. They work by implementing some of the following principles. We only ever deal with one issue at a time. We're fair and courteous to everybody. When we're having a discussion, we talk about the topic, or we focus on the merits of the question. We don't go off in different directions. We don't add 5 other topics to it. We stay focused. We have a vote so that the people who are not in favor of something get a chance to say no and have that recorded in the minutes if they wish. Majority does rule. And that while the majority rules, the minority did get their chance to have a say. It was heard. So that we know that there was balance in the discussion, we know that there was balance in the decision. So all meetings, all discussions, when you're following strict rules of order, start with a motion. And to make a motion, you need to be recognized by the chair. And when the chair calls your name, you stand up and make your motion. For most motions, there needs to be a seconder. And then the chair rereads the motion so that everybody knows what was proposed. And then the debate begins. Once the debate is finished, we have a vote, the chair announces the vote, and that is the decision, and the discussion is over. Now, sometimes when somebody makes a motion and we're having the discussion, we want to make changes to it. So there are ways to change a motion. The mover or seconder can change the motion freely before it's read by the chair. Sometimes the mover has made a mistake in the wording, or somebody wants a little better clarification. Maybe they've proposed a color and they said blue, and somebody says, well, really we mean royal blue. And the person who moved the motion said, oh, absolutely, just change it. By sort of unanimous consent. Nobody in the room objects to that. They all say that change is fine. We can make an amendment. So somebody stands up and wishes to move an amendment to the motion. Somebody could do that amendment by changing some words in it, or they could even change it, put a whole new motion in there instead of the one that's there. And sometimes we really aren't ready to make the decision. As we have the discussion, we realize there's more information we need. And so often we refer the motion to a committee to do that research, to look at the options, and to bring back something at our next meeting. So how do we control the debate? How do we make sure that it's fair? How do we guarantee that minority voice? Well, here are some principles for controlling debate. Let the person who moved the motion speak first, and let them speak at the end as well. Let every person speak once before anybody gets to speak a second time, except perhaps if somebody is being asked a question to clarify their comment. Maybe they used a word people don't understand, or maybe people didn't hear them. But in principle, Each person speaks, and then after everybody's had their first chance to address the motion, then people can have a second chance, or a third. Sometimes you have a large assembly of people, so you restrict the number of times that people can speak to a motion, or perhaps you restrict how long you're going to allow the debate to go on. It's not uncommon that when someone stands up to make a comment, to participate in the debate, they start with, "I'm going to speak in favor of the motion," or "against." That way their comments are easily understood within the context of the motion. Remember that questions of clarification, maybe somebody can't hear, maybe it's too hot, those kind of statements can be asked out of sequence. But otherwise, questions should be asked in sequence as recognized by the chair. Sometimes debate, though, can get really heated. People are arguing, tempers are flying, and what can we do? Well, sometimes we need to take a recess. We need to take a break. If you've created an agenda with timelines, maybe you need to say, "Folks, we're running out of time. We'll have debate for 5 minutes and then decide if we should carry this over to our next meeting or if we're ready to make the decision." Sometimes we'll end the debate by setting a time limit, or by a motion that you'll see on the cheat sheet called closing debate, where we make a motion to stop the debate because we feel it's gone on long enough. We can pass that item to the committee. We can postpone the discussion to our next meeting. We can study the issue. Or maybe it's actually an inappropriate issue, which is what we call out of order. And somebody may say that it's inappropriate for us to talk about that, and we therefore move that discussion to a location or to a time or to a meeting where it's more appropriate. We've talked about voting. It's important to remember there are a number of types of voting. Simple majority, what we call the 51%. Remember that you can vote yes for a motion, you can vote no for a motion, but you can also abstain from a motion. And it's important to note the difference. When you abstain, you don't just vote no. You actually say, "I'm not participating in this vote." So if, for example, as we show on the screen, 100 votes are cast and 20 people abstain, then really we consider that only 80 votes have been made. And therefore, you'd only need 41 yeses out of the 100 to pass the motion, because 20 people stepped out of the vote. So be very careful when people use abstentions, because it does drastically affect the vote. Some votes, and you'll see these on the cheat sheet, require 2/3 of the room to vote. And those are ones like closing the debate, changing the time limit, limiting speakers. They are motions that change the rights of others or change the rules of the debate. And you'll see them on the cheat sheet, as I've mentioned. And then there's also plurality of voting, which is who gets the most votes. And we don't worry about who got 51 or 66.6, like an election. There's lots of ways that we can vote. People can vote by saying aye and nay, by raising of hands, by standing, by roll call, where we call the name and they vote. We can do secret ballots. Generally, the chair gets to choose how we vote. But sometimes, if we're not sure the ayes and nays are balanced, often we'll have a second vote using a different method to make sure that we know what the result was. Lots of people ask about proxy voting, and that's where you give your vote to somebody else. Your bylaws will tell you whether that's allowed or not. It's important to understand the concept of unanimous consent or general consent. It's used a lot to approve motions that there is no debate on. It's just a simple thing, like approving the agenda. And what happens is the chair says, if there's no objection, then we adopt the motion, and they read the motion, by unanimous or general consent. The motion is recorded in the minutes that way. There's no need to have a debate or to count the votes. So generally, someone moves to adjourn, we second it, and if there's no objections, the chair says we're adjourned. And very rarely does anybody ever object. Remember, that was correct what I just said. Somebody moves adjournment, somebody seconds it, and the chair just says if there's no objections. Because it's very rare that anybody ever objects to the adjournment of a meeting.